My husband went missing 6 months ago. Just went out to work one day and never came home. It was a horrible shock to the whole neighborhood because things like that just didn't happen in our little slice of white picket fence suburbia. The police launched an investigation and the neighborhood watch sent out search parties, but no one ever found any evidence to indicate what had happened to him. Our families were devastated. Recently, the missing posters have been taken down or papered over. The updates from the police became less frequent and dwindled away. I accepted that, hard as it was to admit, my Rick wasn't coming back. Until he did. A week ago, I was in the back garden watering my petunias when I heard the garden gate creak open. I jerked my head in that direction and there he was. Exactly the same as he was the day he disappeared. Same windswept blonde hair and bright blue eyes, same curl to his pink lips. I was in shock. Our families had mourned for him, and yet there he was, standing in our garden like he had just popped out for milk or something. When I asked where he had been, he said he didn't know. He couldn't remember anything about the last 6 months. All our family and friends are beside themselves with joy. They almost can't believe it, but that's just the thing. I don't believe it. Look, I understand how crazy this all sounds. I do. Our families would never believe me, and I can't go to the police unless I want to end up in a straitjacket. But I just know that the man sleeping next to me isn't my husband. I don't know what to do. I know I should be happy, but I'm not. I'm terrified. I don't know much about anything supernatural or paranormal. I don't even like watching horror movies. But something about this whole situation makes my skin crawl. Just let me explain why I'm so sure. Once I've done that, hopefully one of you will believe me and you'll be able to tell me what to do. The morning after Rick came home, I made him a cup of tea. When I handed it to him, he gave me the brightest smile. Then he took a sugar cube from the dish on the table and dropped it into the cup. Our house was in chaos with his return, and I was still in shock, so I didn't think much of it at the time, but it's been replaying in my mind ever since. I know it doesn't sound very significant, but my husband never put sugar in his tea. He was always adamant that it ruined the taste, and he'd get so frustrated if I ever put sugar in his cup by accident. And yet, this man had sugar. Then it was the golf. A few days ago, when he was out visiting his mum, I recorded a golf tournament that was showing on the TV. It was one of Rick's favourite golfers that was competing, and he never missed it. Once, he even skipped out on an anniversary dinner just to watch a championship. Only, when he came home from his parents and I told him what I'd done, he just seemed unbothered. Like, he said thanks and everything, and then he asked if I wanted to get dinner. He didn't even watch it, and that's just so out of character for him. Then one night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to see Rick's face inches from mine just, looking at me with these blank eyes. I kinda gave this nervous laugh and asked, "Baby, what are you doing?" And he didn't answer. For like a solid 30 seconds, he just stared, almost like he was looking right through me. Then he suddenly smiled and said, "Sorry, honey. Sometimes I just can't believe this is real." Then he just rolled over and went to sleep. I didn't get much sleep after that. Yesterday, about a week after he came home, the neighborhood threw a street party to celebrate his return. Everyone from our street and the streets on either side turned up to see him and tell him how happy they are that he's all right. When he wasn't standing with his arm around my waist, he was milling around chatting amicably to each and every one of our neighbors, even the little kids. Jackson, Our next-door neighbour, Sally's toddler, wanted to play peekaboo, and Rick happily played along with a smile on his face. Now, my husband never did that. Rick always said he didn't like kids. That's why we never had any, and so he never wanted to play with any of the neighbourhood children, especially not Jackson. Rick all but avoided him. Before he disappeared, I had started to suspect it was so I wouldn't see them together and notice the subtle but unmistakable similarities. The final nail in the coffin, proverbially speaking, was Sally. Just this morning, she came knocking on our door. Her excuse was the tray of brownies she carried, but I think she just wanted to push her way into our morning so that she could see for herself what the situation was. After she left, I called her a nosy busybody. Rick laughed, kissed my head, and agreed with me. That was when I knew for sure that it couldn't really be him. Rick always used to get so mad whenever I insulted Sally, like I didn't have any right to hate her even though she'd been fucking my husband for years. But today, there was none of that. He didn't even try to defend her. I know what you must be thinking. If he was in an accident or something, he might have had some kind of traumatic brain injury that caused him to forget some things about his life, maybe even change his personality. And that's a valid, reasonable explanation. I have no doubt it's what the police would tell me if I reported all this. But you know why I'm dead certain that man isn't my husband. He doesn't have a scar. If he was really Rick, he'd have a scar on the side of his forehead, shaped like the golf club I hit him with. But there's nothing, not a mark. Honestly, I'm this close to going out tonight and digging up my petunias just to make sure he's still under there. I don't know what I'm sharing a bed with, but I know it's not my husband. So what the hell am I going to do? My grandpa was always smiling. Even when he was asleep, which he was often, I'd often stumble upon him snoring under one of the trees in the field. There was an older tree with thick, gnarled branches covered in bark, flaking off in large sheets, that was his favourite. He said it was weathered and sturdy, like he was. I asked him where Grandma had gone. I was a child, and we had been out trying to milk the cows. He stopped and looked up at me. Well, she went for a walk deep into the forest. He pointed through the barn doors and towards the tree line that led to a massive forest bordering our property. She has gone to get us more food and will not come back. But the food will. I asked why Grandma didn't say goodbye, and that if she was upset with me. He chuckled and said she was only in a hurry, but she had left a message for me. That she loved me very much and would always be thinking of me. He asked if I understood, and I nodded. He laughed and pat me on the head. I always loved his laugh, full of mirth and loud. He went missing one afternoon. I had saw him earlier that day sleeping under his tree. Twigs had blown over him in his sleep, covering him like a patchy blanket. He hadn't packed a bag or taken his car. He simply didn't show up for dinner, and his chair remains empty. My mom had passed when I was little, so I had only my dad left. We threw ourselves into farm work for the next few days, at night sitting together in silence, playing chess or sipping glasses of whiskey. We got several new bottles after the first week. I asked him one night where he thought Grandpa had gone. He stared ahead and replied in a flat tone, "He's dead, or gone where we shouldn't follow." I tried to get him to elaborate further, and he refused. He never told me where it was he thought Grandpa had went. After a while I got angry and demanded answers. I was shouting and grabbed his shirt. I was drunk. We fought. and both went to bed with regrets. That night there was a storm, and a great crash even louder than the thunder from outside. In the morning we found several trees had been uprooted, barn doors hung open, and wet crops scattered the grass. Grandpa's tree had collapsed in the storm. Its large branches sunk into the dirt wherever they had landed. The trunk had split in two, and it took us weeks to break it up and clear it out. The sun was hot, but slowly starting to approach the horizon. We had been working late that day as we had nearly finished breaking up the trunk and its branches. We never did finish. I got started digging out an area around the former base of the tree to begin pulling up all its roots. About halfway through, I felt my shovel hit something, a different texture than dirt. I heard a wet squelch, and brought back my shovel to find it covered in a dripping greyish black substance. We don't know how my grandpa's body got buried underneath the tree. It was tangled and crushed between many of the roots, as if they had grown around him, and suddenly constricted like a snake. I can still remember the look on my dad's face. Horror. He wept and I sat there with him. After a while he stood up without a word and began striding towards the tree line. I caught up to him and asked what he was doing. When he met my eyes now, his face held only anger. He told me to move, and with that look on his face, I almost did. We stood there, frozen in time as I studied his expression. His body WSS rigid, and his hands were clenched by his side. He was gritting his teeth, and his eyes were dark. When he spoke, his voice was low and measured. Your mother didn't die when you were young. The tall grass pulled her unground. You were in her arms. I only had enough time to grab you before she was gone. He wasn't looking at me anymore. I didn't try to stop him as he pushed past me and into the forest. When I went to take a step after him, something deep in my gut told me I would never come back if I followed. So I didn't. I watched him slowly disappear into the bushes while I called his name. He never looked back. I thought I was going to leave. I packed up my car and went to bed last night for what I thought was the last time in this house. I woke up to the sound of laughter. It was coming from the forest. It was just as loud and full of mirth as I remember. I can still hear him laughing now. On the 21st of June 2020, Noah, 14, left home on his bicycle at 5:45 p.m. to meet up with friends at a park across town. It was a route he had travelled many times before. He was carrying his backpack, which held his laptop and several books. 5 minutes later, Donahoe was spotted on CCTV footage riding down Royal Avenue, a busy shopping district. By the time he made it to the end of the street, his backpack was gone. No one witnessed how he lost the bag, and cameras didn't capture what had happened to it. At 6 p.m, a driver saw Donahoe fall off his bike at an intersection. The citizen tried to help the boy up, but Noah quickly rode off. CCTV next captured Noah riding his bicycle miles away from where he was supposed to be meeting up with friends. He was naked and missing his helmet. A witness confirmed seeing the young man without any clothes riding in a neighborhood far from his planned route. Again, CCTV was unable to capture where the boy had lost his belongings. At 6:03 p.m, the final recording of Noah captured him getting off of his bike and walking naked down the side of a house toward a gated Seaview Park. It was the last time he was seen alive. When Noah failed to come home that night, his mother, Fiona, immediately became concerned. He had promised to call her at 6:30 p.m, and he was typically very punctual. At 9:30 p.m, she called the police to report him missing. Authorities immediately began looking for the boy, and search and rescue teams soon recovered his bicycle in the neighborhood where he was last seen on camera. They also found his phone near the route he had been cycling. His clothing was never recovered. After 6 days, the search ended when Noah's body was discovered in a storm drain half a mile from where he had abandoned his bike. Police believe he entered a drain at Seaview Park that a maintenance worker had mistakenly left unlocked. Though Donahoe's body had been in the drain system for days by the time it was found, it showed very few signs of water damage. A medical examiner concluded that he had died from drowning. The tide comes twice a day in those tunnels, so he would have been submerged twice a day, said Fiona. But the only water damage to Noah's body was his hands and feet. And there's sewage in that tunnel, so sewage and bacteria would have done horrendous damage. Also, there was no rodent damage, no insect damage. Muir Clark, a superintendent of the police service of Northern Ireland, announced that there was no evidence to suggest foul play was involved, and the coroner agreed. Clark stated that he believed Noah had suffered a head injury after falling off his bike and had become disoriented. Noah Donahoe's laptop was later found in the possession of a known local criminal named Darrell Paul, who had previous convictions of theft and armed robbery. Paul claimed that he had found Donahoe's backpack near Royal Avenue, and he was never officially implicated in the teen's murder. In the years since Donahoe's death, his mother and aunt have launched a campaign disputing the official version of events that led to the boy's disappearance. Fiona Donahoe alleged that 4 witnesses heard screaming near the spot where her son was last spotted. She claimed that she went to the police with this story, but they never followed up.